Hello, thank you for being prompt and being here at 2 o'clock Eastern time. So we're going to go ahead and get started here in a second. A few housekeeping items. You feel free to use our questions box to ask any questions that you have. There may be some that we're able to answer. There may be some that we aren't sure the answers of, or there may be some that we would like to handle with you one-on-one, but feel free to ask them and we'll kind of sort through those questions at the end. The other thing is that if you are on this webinar and you need to leave, we record all these webinars, so we will send the slides out and we will send the recording out, so don't worry about that. I'm going to, at this point, hand over this portion of the presentation over to Kevin Harris, our CFO, who will go over kind of the who, what, when, where of fee transparency laws.
Okay, so today's agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about the legal stuff. I'm going to do that, the fee transparency laws overview. Then we're going to talk about how RunSignup keeps events compliant. I'm going to turn it over to Brian about halfway through, and he's going to go over some of the products and screens and features in RunSignup that help keep you compliant. And then we'll open things up for Q&A at the end. All right, so what are fee transparency laws? So fee transparency laws are consumer product laws that have been passed by 7 states to improve ticket pricing transparency to consumers. There's been a lot of press about this. There's been some discussion in the Biden administration about junk fees. There was a lot of press and discussion around some of the Taylor Swift concerts and people not being able to get tickets and having to pay exorbitant prices to get tickets. And some of that has driven states to enact their own laws. Effectively, what those laws do is they require event organizers to disclose all the mandatory fees up front. So not just the price of the ticket or the event itself, but any mandatory fees that go along with that. And that's what's called all upfront, all-in pricing, where you display a single price inclusive of registration price, processing fees, and any other additional mandatory or required fees to buy that ticket or that registration. The purpose is to prevent hidden fees and unexpected costs at checkout, ensuring pricing fairness and clarity. And there's been, as I mentioned, growing scrutiny on ticketing companies that have predatory or anti-competitive pricing tactics like this Taylor Swift example that some states use in enacting their laws. The impact, we're taking a conservative approach here, that the laws apply to registrations, ticketing, store add-ons, and membership in the state of the event. Does not apply to a donation-only transaction and does not include sales tax, because at the time that you first look at the price and mandatory fees, you don't necessarily know if sales tax even applies. So it isn't necessarily a mandatory fee at that point in time. Which states have passed the fee transparency laws? Here's a list. California, Connecticut, New York, Tennessee, Minnesota, Maryland, and Colorado. The only one that we've not yet enacted on our platform is Connecticut, and we will enable that on October 14th. So pricing for events that are being held in Connecticut on our platform as of October 14th will begin to show all-in pricing. And will more states continue to pass fee transparency laws? We think it's pretty likely. State by state rollout, each state may enact its own version until a federal law is passed. There are currently bills in Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Virginia. In each of those states, those bills have passed, I think, one of their legislative bodies, but not both. So potentially those states may be next on the list. There may be other states that are considering these bills now as well. There's also a federal law out there, and there is bipartisan support in Congress to make that happen. So this could override or be in addition to state laws. And that would and could standardize fee transparency nationwide. The momentum here is driven by consumer demand for transparencies, especially after controversies with high processing fees like we've talked about with the Taylor Swift concerts and with some ticketing companies. There's been this initiative to target junk fees. And what does it cost you if you don't comply? The penalties are pretty egregious. From $1,000 per consumer that's affected in the state of California to a $10,000 fine in Maryland. And some of these fines actually go to the consumer. So the consumer might have a reason to want to report a situation or a violation of a transparency law because they can get the money themselves as part of that penalty. Event organizers are liable for violations. We keep events compliance with RunSignup websites and email marketing. For example, our automatic price increase emails and other pricing related replacement tags. Your event needs to be responsible and aware of other places that you show pricing. For instance, you can show text in places on the RunSignup site, and you don't want that to be different than the all-in pricing that's shown in the pricing tiles on your race page or on your event page. And as I mentioned, consumer protection benefits from penalties in some states go to the affected consumer. So those consumers may have an incentive to try to seek out violations and report them to the state. How RunSignup tracks and interprets the fee transparency laws. So as I mentioned, we've got automatic compliance in the states that are affected, this group of 7 states. We did a major development project to update the many places where we show pricing to show the all-in price. So to show the cost of the registration or the ticket and the mandatory fees that go along with that. We are working hard to stay on top of fee transparency laws with help from customers. So we've heard from customers in some states and we followed up on that and determined in which places, additional places we needed to turn on. And we also hired our lawyers, a consumer products lawyer from the company that we use as corporate counsel to do an investigation for us. And they helped us better understand the state laws and better understand what they all applied to. As we mentioned earlier, we do interpret the state law as impacting price transparency for registration, ticketing, and or membership. And we enable for that state to go live on the date their law goes into place. So if additional states enact, we'll pay attention to that and we'll make those updates when and if those additional laws go into place. Educational resources, we'll do regular updates to help event organizers stay informed about legal changes, and that includes emails to directors in states where we will enable fee transparency. So we're going through that process right now for events in the state of Connecticut, where we're going to turn that on in October 14th to keep events compliant in that state. And I'm going to turn it over to Brian at this point to go over our product and features that are related to compliance in this area.
Yeah, so these are just some screenshots of all of us are consumers in some shape or fashion. And so your participants are consumers that are making purchases on our platform. So these are showing some of those examples of what is the consumer seeing. So if you look on the left-hand side, the Snyder and Donuts 5K, it's $32.80. So that indicates that it's a $30 entry fee that includes a $2.80 processing fee. On the right-hand side, this is where things start to get more nuanced, is that we also try to indicate to the consumer that if you sign up multiple people, because we charge per cart and not per participant, that there may be, the fees might be a little bit lower if you add multiple people to your cart. And then once you enter the registration path, we're showing you a turkey trot example. So again, it's $43.40, which includes the $3.40 fee. And then if you notice the little I on here, that is some help text that gives some context to what is included here. This gives you a little bit of a magnitude of the complexity. So this 10K has 3 price points for date-based pricing, which a race typically uses to drive urgency. So it's like, hey, if you register before October 31st, that's our lowest price, and the next lowest price, and then finally race day pricing. Well, the complexity comes in here. Well, they don't just have date-based pricing, they also have age-based pricing. So if you're between the ages of 1 and 14, they're offering discounted pricing. So these pricing schemes cannot just be your normal price if you're offering discounted pricing for teams or age-based pricing, which isn't super uncommon. We are calculating and showing that pricing with the fees. And that's really the devil in the details here, is that it's not just the single price, it's the price for each price point and each way that you price your event. And we're taking care of all of that. And I like to show this example because it shows a bit of the complexity. And this is certainly not the most complex pricing event on our site, but some of the thought that our development team has put into to try to ensure compliance and give the consumer the correct price. So one of the other things that's built into the platform that some people may not be aware of is we offer within our email platform automated emails that are price increases. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, okay, October 31st, the price is going to go up. Well, that's obviously going to try to drive people to register, but in your emails, you also have to show the all-in price. So you can see in this example, the current price in the red box, the sprint triathlon is $164.09, which includes the processing fees. The Olympic is $164.09. So these examples are showing the all-in price on the email. So, being that we work with so many events, I could see where someone would miss this. It's like, well, I updated my website. These laws don't just apply to your website. They apply to any place that you're publishing pricing, including emails and social media posts. So some of our customers have reached out to us and said, I really like the fee transparency because I think that the consumer should know what the all-in price is. So we allow you to enable fee transparency in states where it is not required. So that is up to you. You're not required to do it. And if it's not listed on the states that we currently have, you're not required to do it. But if you choose to do it under financial, pricing, and then fee transparency, you can have this turned on, and then it will show the pricing in the previous slides that I had there with all the different pricing options. And we do have a few customers that have decided to do that. So what we're highlighting here is one of the challenges that we have is that we do not charge per person, we're charging per cart. And that is to the advantage of the race director, and that is to the advantage of the consumer. And so quite often this can be lost to the consumer, but now with fee transparency, people are starting to notice there's a difference in pricing when they check out on other platforms. So what you're going to see is more awareness and understanding of what processing fees are being charged on what platforms. So what I would expect to see in these states that have this turned on is more questions about processing fees than there were in the past. And kind of what does that include and what does that not include? Is it per person? You're just going to see more questions about processing fees. So what some of our events are doing, because this can become onerous, and just say, hey, this is really hard to keep up with. How can I simplify this? So what some of our customers are doing are they're choosing to absorb the processing fee. So an example would be, let's say you charge $50 and the processing fee was going to be, let's just call it $54. So $54 is the all-in price, but it may not always be that clean because your next price point might be $55, and then that's like $59.50 with the all-in fee. So some people just don't like having pricing that's not clean. So you could say, you know what? We're just going to absorb the processing fee. So instead of it being $50 plus the processing fee, we're just going to have it, it's going to be $55 including the processing fee. And then when the price goes up, it's $60 including the processing fee. And this means that the way that you've always done business is going to continue to be the way you do business in the future, meaning you're going to have pricing on your website, you're going to have pricing in your emails, you're going to have pricing on your social media, and that's because you're absorbing the processing fee. So some people have just kind of jumped on this and said, I want to simplify. I don't want to have ugly pricing on my site because it is kind of dependent on what the processing fee is, and you're welcome to do that. And the other thing is that this allows you from a marketing standpoint to say to consumers, this is the price. This price includes processing fees. And you'll likely see some positive feedback from participants saying, I appreciate the fact that this price includes everything. And so if you have questions about that, The way that we do that in our system is that we allow you to choose if you want to have the processing fee come out of the charge. And essentially what we would suggest is that the pricing should be about the same. So if they were going to pay $54.50 in my example and they pay $55, it's kind of a negligible difference. It's just cleaner. So that's what we've seen a few customers reach out to us and say, how can I comply with the law but not have the processing fee kind of rolled into the price without control? This gives you that control. So here's an example of a customer. They have events in some states that do have fee transparency, and they have events in states that don't have fee transparency laws. And they have chosen to turn on fee transparency for all of their events, just to kind of say, hey, we believe that fee transparency is the right way to do business. We're going to turn it on for all of our events. And so that way, if you're signing up for an event in California, which does have fee transparency, but you signed up for an event in Arizona that doesn't, you would be like, okay, well, what's the difference in pricing? In this case, it's always going to look the same. So they've made a decision to just turn this on for all of their events. One other piece to point out here is that this customer has chosen to, when you want to get pricing about your event, they're linking over to the RunSignup page for each of their locations. So what that means is that you can have the who, what, when, where on your website. The how much is then contained on our website. So that is an interesting way to get around pricing, is to say, well, when you're ready to find out what the price is, that is contained on RunSignup, which is keeping us in compliance with the fee transparency laws. Another example of a customer is Trail Racing Over Texas. They have decided to turn on the fee transparency as well. They just got a lot of positive feedback from their consumers, appreciating the fact that they understand the all-in fee of how much they're paying at checkout. So, and they're getting positive feedback from participants about the fee transparency and making it easier for them to understand the entire price. Another example is Bikes and Beers. They have events up and down the East Coast, as well as one in Florida and one in California. So they have done all-in pricing, and then they're calling out, very clearly on their event tiles that the price includes the processing fee. And this is what I was mentioning a couple minutes ago, is saying, hey, this is the price you're going to pay at checkout. So that's just something to consider. I've talked to a number of events who are struggling a little bit with this, and it is simpler to just say, hey, let's absorb the fees. And that's where the benefits of the RunSignup pricing comes into effect, is that we are not charging on a per participant basis, we charge on a per cart basis. And all along, we're then also keeping you in compliance with sales tax. And sales tax in general, there is one state that has a question about this, is not part of the fee transparency laws. So Johanna, do we have questions? I saw the question box flashing, so I think we have some questions.
Yes. So I kind of consolidated a few of these, and some of them you did touch on through the webinar, but I think it's worth reiterating and making sure that everyone heard the answer to that. Do fee transparency laws impact all organization types, including 501c3s?
Yes, there is no differentiation between a 501c3 and a for-profit business for fee transparency.
Does this affect other transaction types, such as merch or store items?
Great question. The answer is yes. So merchandise and store items do have to follow fee transparency, and that is part of some of the complexity that we have, is that someone could buy merchandise during the registration process, or someone could buy merchandise after they've completed their registration, depending on the rules of the event. But so if you think about it as afterwards, that's where it really, really matters, because now they're initiating a brand new transaction.
And this, I think, kind of hits on how the workaround that you showed. But if we charge for an event and don't necessarily absorb the processing fees, but we give people the option to pay the processing fees, does it still show as all-in pricing?
I haven't had anybody do that yet, but my assumption is going to be is if you're if you have the option, we're going to keep you in compliance with that. But I believe the default would be it's going to be the price of the event plus the processing fee. And then what would happen at checkout is if you choose to absorb the fees is where, or not absorb the fees is where that would change.
We're based in Colorado, but host an event that is completely virtual. Do we need to have fee transparency active? We do, but
Kevin, you want to take that one? Because that is.
Yeah, it's going to be the address of the event, and a virtual event doesn't always have an address. I would say for simplicity, you probably should turn on fee transparency if you're a Colorado-based business.
This one I think did get touched on, but we have an event in Montana, but participants register online from across the country. Is the law only applicable to the state in which the event takes place versus where someone lives?
For the most part, the answer to that is yes. And that's the way we follow the law, is it's based upon the address of the event. There is some complication with the state of California that we're still reviewing. But for the most part, the laws do say the state of the event.
All right. I think that is it. I was going through to make sure I didn't miss any. That looks like it. So unless we have anything that comes in the last second, looks like we are good.
Yeah, and the only other thing we would ask is if you do receive any sort of notification or you read a news article, say you live in Washington State and you receive a news alert that they're going to be passing a junk fees law or a fee transparency law, whatever they name the law, they've got all sorts of different names, and you come across that, please send it our way, because the majority of the times that we're finding out about this is from our customers sharing information like that with us, because we just don't have our eyes and ears on all of these, and we've done a sweep to try to find out what potential laws may be coming, and it's been difficult to keep up with these laws.
Sorry, I lied. I have two more that have come in. One, just kind of as an overall, what types of events are affected?
Yeah, so the laws are very broad and very gray, and they use terms like ticket, they use terms like amusement, entertainment, athletic contest, and that's why we've taken a conservative approach, because a registration is a form of a ticket, and a registration could certainly be called as an attendance at an athletic contest. So we think it's really any type of ticket or registration that's sold in that state.
And one more with merchandise, how does it work with shipping costs for merchandise?
So shipping costs are actually called out in many of the laws, and shipping costs are allowed to be added later, because you don't know the shipping address, you don't know what the mandatory cost would be for shipping costs. So they can get added into the cart later and don't have to be disclosed up front, because you don't know where it's shipped to, particularly if there's a variable price for shipping.
So that looks like it's it. Thank you guys for coming and for asking a lot of questions. We'll send some notes in the follow-up email tomorrow as well. And please, as Brian said, let us know if you want to come across any questions as this continues.
Thank you.
Thank you.